So, hi everyone, and a very warm welcome. Thank you very much for dialing in for what is, for me, going to be an extremely interesting conversation. I've been following Mteto for some time now. It's difficult not to because he's popping up everywhere, just doing some incredible things. And so, the opportunity to get to ask him about his leadership journey and particularly his views on respect, power, and accountability is something I'm super looking forward to. If you've not dialed in or watched one of these webinars before, I'll say what I say at the start of every single one. Please contribute, ask your questions, get involved. I'd love to have the whole hour to myself, but hopefully some of you guys are going to step in and get some questions out there for Mteto to answer. If, which I find it completely unbelievable, you're not sure who Mteto is and you want a quick look on LinkedIn, all I can say is he's a giant for South Africa. He's led IBM and Microsoft, MTN and Altron. He's now one of the principal investors and chairman for BSG, a great consultancy down here in South Africa. And obviously, unless you've been hiding under a rock, he's the current chairman for Eskom. But it's not the titles that impress me. I've interviewed him before. It's really about the process that he's gone through right from when he was a young boy to a man, to his first job, to his first managerial position, his leadership positions, up until to date, which have been particularly impressive. I'm hoping we're going to get some of those insights as well. So with that, Mteto, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Colin, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this hour and also engaging with your audience.
Let's just start on the title when we talk about respect. And this is something I hadn't thought about, much, but as you pointed out, what are the steps that we go through to go and respect our leaders? And do we sometimes, I suppose, respect people too easily just because of the culture and the background that we come from? Can you explain what you were thinking there?
Yeah, for me, I think the starting point was always around values. I was been exploring values, the value of values in terms of just leadership in general, and when I looked at values, I found that there are some values that are actually common across all cultures, and respect is one of those values that regardless of where you go to Japan, you go to the UK, the US, or Africa, it is something that is there and something that's valued. But I then realized that no, man, but the way each culture looks at this one thing is actually different. And I looked at my own culture being a black South African. I realized that respect does not always come from a situation where one has to earn it. It comes with the position that you've got, or whether you are older than me or not. Your seniority, and that automatically gives one respect. And whereas in other cultures is that and something else, or in other cultures is none of this. Is you have to earn respect, and you can have a situation where somebody you used to respect, but at some point you decide to know this person now no longer qualifies for me to continue to respect them. And that's fascinating for me, because then it talks to how ordinary people then relate to the individual concerned. In our case here, you find that we tend not to challenge authority, largely because of that. When in reality, when we're living in an environment like we are, we have to hold people accountable. How do you then hold people accountable when you are actually just always deferring to them, or yeah, just yeah, you're scared of engaging them? So this is a fascinating space for me, which creates actually a problem and also an opportunity in the sense that if we can crack some of this, we can start to shift some of the things that we see around us, we can start to see how people and communities can start to hold their leaders accountable and help us to lift ourselves out of the challenges that we are facing. I know it's a long story that I've given you, but yeah, it comes from that broad sense of values.
Do we crack this though? Because, actually thinking about it, you're right. I mean, I think about my career. People are um, underestimate, I think, often the amount of power that they are able to hold because of the position that they have. And I certainly know when I was working, I often thought that people would listen to me just because whatever I was saying was interesting and useful. You step back after a few years and realize actually it
It
probably
was your
wasn't
position. It,
100% the position. They were kind of
it
forced.
was all people were immediately you were out of that position. We are ordinary, and then nobody really is interested in you.
So, you've yes, that's you've summed it up, unfortunately, rather well. How do you avoid that as a leader? I mean, what keeps you grounded? Because obviously, you're very aware of the fact that people respect you, because, as you said, because of your age, because you're the chairman of one of our parastatals, because of the experiences that you've got, because of the culture that you bring. Um, you could be absolutely terrible
I'm
at what you do.
retired. I'm retired now. So that's very important to you understand. Before I became the chairman of ESCOM, I was this guy who's retired, right? But what you want is that when you do not have a title, you still have people reaching out to you and asking for this and asking for that, and that is to me is a respect that has been earned, and it talks to the work that you do. It talks to how one lives his life. Are you someone that people look up to as a role model? What are the choices that you make that make people to feel like, okay, this is what I'd like to follow that. So it's less about the position, but more about how you show up, your behaviors and how you treat people, and that is what is important, and how you support those that are do not have power. Maybe you treat those who are weak. How do you treat them? You know, and that then ends you the respect. Which, if you stop doing that, you would also actually lose the respect.
How do you stay so grounded, Mteto? I mean, if people haven't met you, I can only assure them that you're so grounded. I mean, whenever we've had conversations, you make me feel special. You put the people around you on pedestals. You talk up their abilities, despite everything that you've achieved. This is, I think, a very deliberate set of steps that you take. Other leaders, there's no point talking about the leaders that use power and are corrupted by power. We can't help those guys. But I find that the majority of leaders are perhaps unaware of the power they have because of their position, and therefore they're kind of ignorant to the impact they're having on others when they're grandstanding. Did you have to go through a kind of a deliberate thought process or tutoring or mentoring to kind of place yourself in this humble state, or is it something that just came naturally to you?
I think it has evolved over time, Colin. It's starting when I look at my own journey as I was studying, and you start to become arrogant. Things seem to come easy, top of the class. You have all of that, and then you start it goes to your head, that thing. Then for me, what happens? I move to the world of work. And then I realized that, hey, things are so different here. It's no longer about that individual thing. It's more about, can you be part of a team? And when you are a leader now, you can be as smart as no matter how much you are smart, but if you cannot get the team and the people that are working for you to exert themselves, to stretch themselves beyond their reach, you are not going to get far. So you start to realize that it's no longer really about me, it's actually about them. you know.
Mm.
Whereas when I was growing up, it was I was at the center, but later on, in terms of my career, it started to become clear to me that life is really about enabling and supporting others, and that's the way, and that has always been the way that I've done it. It's not like I went to any training course for this, but I just realized practically what is it that helps me to become effective as a leader. Mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Good question from Sharon. How do we get this respect culture in the youth and future leaders? That's a great question. I've got no idea. How do we instill respect culture in the youth and our future, leaders? And I guess there's two sides. One is how do we get people to not just immediately respect people in positions of power, to wait for them to earn it and to have open conversations. And when you get into a position of power, how do we get them to remain so humble?
You see, you ask me where some of this comes from. When I look back, though, I look at where I grew up, my parents. They've got a lot to do with how we all turn up as their children, and they have influenced us. So the question that is being asked, how do you get it's about modeling. you know this thing of modeling, we take it for granted, and we think that is how do you go about doing things, and your children are looking at you, and that's really, it starts at home. It goes to schools. It starts with you holding them accountable for things. I remember my wife was very clear with regards to our daughter. As she was growing up, she's had to start to learn doing things on her own. It cannot be, you wake up, you sort out your bed. You go and do, prepare your lunch. All of that thing. It's driving this discipline. It's driving this thing of in my mind, of respect, and of also doing things on your own. So we have a huge responsibility as parents. Unfortunately, we tend to outsource that of late. Unfortunately, as well, if you outsource it, there are consequences, and you see, you end up with this young adult that you do not quite relate to, but it may be this person has been learning all of these things from all of these people that you left them with, you know. So I'm sorry to be saying this to the whoever asked the question, but it really goes back to us as parents, largely. Mm,
Let's talk
mm.
about when you were young and growing through and that kind of first job, because my sense is from reading your book Betting on a Darkie and from chatting with you before that this was quite a profound influence on your life. I mean, you came from a family where you were the youngest of many, and there wasn't much money available to support the family. I'm guessing this had quite a significant impact in terms of your views around work and work ethics.
Yeah, look, I came from a very large family. My parents, they had 10 of us. So I'm one of the nine. I've got nine siblings. There's 10 of us. My dad divorced. He, he then got married to my mother. So I'm the firstborn uh, of of the second lot, basically. And so coming out of that environment, them being teachers with 10 children, it was clear that we are going to have a problem if they do not figure out how to feed us. So my mom decided to take the risk herself and cash out her pension and use that money to start up a trading store, which then became really the thing that helped all of us. Almost all of us went to university, were paid and supported by this shop, you know, and and but we spent a lot of hours, working behind that counter, as we were going to schools, waking up in the morning, 4:30, you go to the bakery, go and fetch fresh produce. When the shop opens at 6 o'clock, it must already be having what the customers are looking for. So somebody must have woken up early. So it kind and this is I still wake up around 4:30 up to today. So I never know whether I'm a morning person or because of the training that I got way back then. And so looking at how my mother was working with the people that she had hired, treating them, making them to be part of the decision making of this business, gaining insights about what the customers are looking for, that shaped the way I look at life. And if you look at now my leadership, uh, always, I go to ESCOM, people tell how I go to the ground, find out from the people on the ground, you know, what's going on, what are the issues. Don't come in and think that you know everything. You have to get it from your clients, from your employees. So all of that for me, I learned it from the little shop that my mother had, which shaped the way I looked at leadership.
Bunch of questions coming in, which I want to get to shortly. But before that, let's continue through as you got older and you went to university. When did you realize that you've got some sort of skill or intelligence which gave you the confidence to go on to the next?
I've always thought we all have intelligence, so it's not like now I've got as long as I'm able to talk and eat and we all have that. But what happened when I was in grade 12, during that time we used to write this thing called Science Olympiad, you know, all matric students across the country, across race groups used to write this thing, and the top 10 students would then go and represent South Africa internationally. So I was one of those students that were the top student in 1980. So which was interesting because during that time we still had the Bantu education, and
Mm.
when you realize that hey, you have been part of this education system that was systematically had made you to actually be inferior, in terms of the quality of the education. But even with that, you are able to compete effectively on par with everybody else. Then you realize that, first, this whole notion that certain people, because of their color, have got this somehow there's this they have been given these powers. That's nonsense. You start to realize that we're actually all, we're all capable. And so that was in 1980 when I was representing South Africa we went to the UK. And when I left South Africa, I left thinking that I remember when I was interviewed by the Daily Dispatch, they said, "What is it that you want to be?" I said, "I want to be a doctor. I want to be a medical doctor." But when I came back after that trip, it was clear to me that it's the last thing that I should be doing, to be a medical doctor. So it exposed me to all of the careers that are out there, and I felt that mechanical engineering is the thing that spoke to who I am, and I pursued that as a career. I'm glad that I did that.
Is that actually advice that you'd pass on to, anyone else as they're looking at their children or they're, starting their careers? Do what you enjoy, or do you think you should focus on where the money is and just go into, I don't know what that is. Actually, no, it used to be banking, but wherever the money is now.
I think Uh, I think you need to look at both, right? Because you can go and just do what you enjoy, but somehow you need to be able to pay the bills and feed yourself and feed your family. So you need to pay attention to what's out there, what is in demand, and within what is in demand, what speaks to you.
Yeah.
Right. Versus just, hey, I'm going to be, for me, I'll just love to write books. But in South Africa, when you are writing books in South Africa, when you when if you've got people like 2,000 people buying your book, that's great. Wow, you've done so well. 2,000, you know. So how can you live with that? You just cannot. So you need to be realistic. So I'm a very practical person. I certainly, yeah, I encourage people to follow their heart, but also understand that you are living in a world where you've got to feed yourself, you've got to support yourself, and yeah, try and balance those two.
Yeah. When I look at your career, and I guess this is a key tenet of what's led you to where you are now. You you have a history of taking on the roles that no one else wants to do, which I find very interesting. And in many ways, a lot of people would perhaps look at this as career suicide, taking the roles that no one else wants to do. But it's worked well for you. And I guess the first one to highlight would be at Afrox, where you started down this path. Can you explain why you look for these roles that no one else wants?
No, look, I always encourage people to be self-aware, Colin, because now if people are listening on this call and say, okay, the next thing that I'm going to do after, this call is over, I'm going to be looking for those jobs that other people don't want. But if it is not who you are, that would be a wrong thing to do, right? So you need to know who you are and the things that excite you, that motivate you. And for me, have that's why I felt that I made the right decision to be an engineer because I like fixing things. I like problem solving. That's the core skill that I take as I move across all of the industries, whether it is manufacturing, telecommunications, or IT. The core capability that I move around with is that ability to just go and figure out, what's the root of the problem? Why are we facing what we're facing? You know, and so I enjoy that piece, but that's me. Other people may enjoy something completely different. So you need to know who you are. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And just also by understanding who you are, what are your capabilities, it also helps you to put together, as you are putting together a team working for you, it has to be a team that complements you. It cannot be always hiring people that have got the same things that you have. That's not good. You're not going to be able to be an effective team that is high performing team. So just by understanding yourself, it helps a number of things. You surround yourself with people that are different from you, and yeah, you also, yeah, so diversity becomes a key thing again for me. Very, very important part of that is to drive that diversity and inclusion. So plus, when I look at the fact that I'm choosing jobs where other people do not want, for me, I don't really like competition. You know. So by going to those jobs where everybody does not want, you're not competing with anybody. You're just all by yourself. Who wants to be in ESCOM really? Who wants to, it's that kind of thing. Yeah.
Can you share your experience at Afrox? Because that's a lovely story.
Yeah, look, I got into that environment at the time just before 1994. I got there before the transition in South Africa. So it was 86. I got into 86, and unfortunately, people like me, there were not many people like me in this kind of environment. I'm talking black people. So it was tough because you have people do not expect, it's like the whole organization is not set up for people like you, and and you have to figure out how to maneuver, how they must work with you. So it was not easy, but what made it easy for me was a manager that reached out to me. His name is Neil Greenfield. And you could see that many people were uncomfortable. They really did not want you. It's like, okay, that guy, okay, he must be there, not close. Here was this person who felt, oh, okay, I would like this guy to be part of my team. I would like to work with him. And 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 yeah, we established a great relationship, and he challenged me a lot, gave me some of the most difficult assignments. And I remember at the time we were looking at things like quality management. Globally, the US was being beaten up by Japan. Or the market share on automobiles, they were losing market share to Toyota, Nissan, and all of that. And and why? Because they had the Japanese were implementing quality management systems, totally quality management, and that is what we decided to drive in South Africa, learning a lot from the Japanese, and this is the stuff that was being driven by Neil Greenfield here in South Africa, and exposed me to all of that. And that is something that up to today, when I go to environments like ESCOM, trying to figure out what is the root cause? Why are we having this problem? You ask five whys, for example, you get to the problem, to the root of the problem. You do statistical process controls to make sure that you're driving continuous improvement and things like that. Building quality into the product instead of inspecting quality. All of those concepts are concepts that were brought to me as we were working on getting Afrox to be a quality-led organization. And that initiative was led by Neil. And I am super, when I think about that, that foundation was an important foundation to help me to be the kind of person that I am in terms of the way I think about things.
Mm. I mean, you were actually getting into gumboots and climbing into boilers. I mean, you can't get more dirty,
Yes.
down to earth than that.
Yes, I mean, if you are going to be fixing things or going to be driving quality, you need to understand how each and every process works. Before you improve a process, you have to understand it. So even when it comes to distribution, because we're distributing all of these gases around Gauteng, scheduling of these vehicles. I used to sit in some of these trucks, trying to figure out their routes and then going back to the computers and just coming up with programs that are helping schedule the routes of these trucks. Today, we've got ways. We didn't have any of that those days. So yeah, it was good, but it helped a lot because when you get to senior roles and people are telling you stuff, you are able to pick up whether this is BS or not, quickly, because you
Mm.
know it. You were there. You can just, if something does not make sense, it doesn't. It's not theoretical to you. Yeah, you got it from the foundation, you know.
Did you never sit there though while you're in the gumboots and you're looking at another path that other managers are taking and they're moving into leadership positions wearing their suits and seemingly, bypassing these practical experiences. They're advancing, they're getting paid more, they're getting promotions. And
It
meanwhile,
was a bit frustrating. It
so
was a bit, I mean, when you look at it, I think it was more, for example, the doctors, people who were together at varsity. And you can see that they are moving like quickly, going up, accumulating, and you are busy there. You are like a trainee for 3 years, engineering training for 3 years. After spending 4 years doing your engineering degree, and then we have not gone anywhere in the 3 years. You are just continuing to be a trainee. That can be, but you then realize later that it's actually you, you you can start slow in order for you to move fast. If you've got the right foundation, it can take you longer to build that foundation, but once you've got the foundation, you are able to move quite fast. But you only learn that later, when you look around, see people, but then you realize how people later on they crash, because they lack some of the foundation, and then you realize that yeah, this low path that I took was actually a good path.
how did you get out of that type of engineering and then move into IBM, a very different um, type of business? I mean, fundamentally different in many different ways, different technology, and you're moving into something where I suppose you're going in with very limited amounts of knowledge about what actually IBM was all about. I can't remember if it was IBM directly after.
Yeah, it was IBM. It was
Yeah.
IBM. Uh, at time of my foundation at the time, I remember I was coming from an assignment or a job at NAMPEC. NAMPEC, immediately after the elections, 1994, was facing a huge problem where people could import the products that they were manufacturing here in South Africa and land them here cheaper than we could manufacture at Nampex. That's a huge problem. So we had to figure out how to take out the cost out of the production environment within. So I was part of that. That we called it world-class manufacturing. Again, we took a lot from the Japanese, the way of doing things, process re-engineering. We did a lot of that. Uh, so as I was working on that, I got this call from IBM and say, "Hey, we would like you to come and join us." And we're like, what is the role? I said, no, we are looking for salespeople. It's like, no, I'm an engineer. I'm not a sales guy. You've got a wrong person. So, no, no, no. It's not a wrong person. We've got enough people who understand IT. We're not looking for IT people. We're looking for people who understand the industries, the different industries, manufacturing, financial services, insurance. These are the people we need because in our company, in IBM, we do not have people that can have conversation with the business leaders in these organizations. So we are looking, it was during the time of Lou Gesner, who he had just taken over from IBM and was turning IBM around. So that attracted me because you end up with they looking for something from you, and there's something that I was fascinated with the technology, information technology, and which I did not know much about. So it was going to be a win-win in that sense that I'm bringing something, but in the process I'm going to be learning something else as well. So that's how I ended up with IBM. Spent 12 years at IBM, both here in South Africa, in the US, and in Europe. Spent another 6 years with Microsoft. So, yeah, it was a good decision.
A good decision. Was this where you started to earn your spurs in turning businesses around? I mean, I think a great question from Sia, which we'll get onto, I guess. Do you have a framework for when you go and look at a business that you want to go and turn around? Because you've done it so many times now. I mean, Ultron and I guess what's happening at Escom, what you did at Microsoft and IBM, I suppose, was the starting point.
Yeah, there is a template. I mean, it's the same way of looking at things, and uh, yeah. I got, I think my foundation of coming, building stuff around world-class manufacturing, total quality management, all of that foundation talks to fixing things. It gives you the tools to be able to analyze your environment and come up with new ways of doing things. I think that it it gave me that background that made me to to be attracted to things that don't work. Yeah, it's just the same thing. If you look at the work that I did at Microsoft, Microsoft was not doing very well in South Africa. They were even thinking of leaving South Africa. They were facing things like had the government of South Africa that decided they're no longer going to be buying Microsoft products. They're going to buying open source. Here is a government is such an important, close to maybe 30, 40% of the market is public sector. When a government decides that they are not going to be buying your products, that's a big thing. And then you realize that even some of the banks were uncomfortable looking at this company as a company that is just arrogant, it does not listen to them. So Microsoft was facing so many problems at the time, and also being they were being asked, hey, you need to sell 30% of your company in South Africa. It needs to be sold to uh, black shareholders. It's like, we have never done anything like that. We are not going to be doing that for South Africa. So they had all of these problems that they were facing, and that's when then I came into Microsoft to try and figure out how they can continue to operate or maybe not, and yeah, and we did so much as a team to try and address the challenges that we're facing at the time, and make our strategy was to make Microsoft locally relevant to South Africa. That's very important. How do we make sure that our company, whatever we're doing, it talks to the priorities of South Africa? And I can tell you, even to today, the foundation that we built even then, it has continues to make Microsoft one of those companies, multinationals, that, when you look at it, you won't realize, you think maybe, I mean, the way they act is like as a local South African company, talking to education, we're focusing on how to improve the quality of our teachers, the management of our schools, the skills, building local skills in South Africa, focusing on small and medium-sized enterprises. These are the challenges that are facing our country, and this is what this company decided to focus to make itself to be locally relevant. And that's, yeah. So it was fascinating, but at the same time you need to it's not about that. You need to grow the business. One of the questions that I was asked, I think it was year 3 of having taken over at Microsoft South Africa, they could see that we are growing the business consistently, double digit, 15%, 20% year on year. Said, okay, what is it that can stop you from growing? That skills, the availability of skills in the South African market. That will stop us from growing. So, okay, what are you going to do about it? you know, and that's how leaders do. They push you. They don't try and solve the problem for you. So we as a local team here in South Africa had to figure out how are we going to solve the skills problem, you know. To cut a long story short, we probably placed close to about 7,000 young people. 7,000 people were unemployed. Trained those people, placed them into the entire Microsoft ecosystem. Hmm? And many of them, these are people that I bump into now. And when I go to these companies and go to the banks and everywhere, these are people that are doing great work. But many of them were unemployed, young unemployed people at the time. You know? And but by just saying, hey, on the one hand, we've got these unemployed graduates. On the other hand, we've got companies, in particular Microsoft partners, that are complaining that they do not have the skills. When you look at that, you can find a solution out of that. You know? And why don't we train people in line with what these companies are looking for? Demand-led training, and the rest is history.
Some of the questions that I'll try to ask him in the right way and as best I can. Maybe we'll start with Shane. So, you've got diverse opinions that you have to listen to when you're making decisions, and especially the more senior you get. I mean, you don't walk into ESCOM and think as a board member or as an executive you're going to learn everything about ESCOM. That would be a lifetime's journey. So you have to listen to people. But how do you ensure you listen to the right people? I'm hoping I'm going to get this right for Shane because
There's no
a lot
such a
of
thing as the right people. You listen. You just
but
go listen.
there's people who won't even talk. There's people, who are introverted, people who are too scared to come to you because their opinion will challenge the consensus and they think it'll be career limiting. There's so many reasons why good people say nothing.
Oh yes. Oh no, I hear you. I hear you. I'll make an example of ESCOM. First, we learned as the board, and we made a decision. We're not going to be this board that is, I guess, coming only once a quarter. The country was in a crisis. We needed to make sure that we make a difference quickly, which means we need to understand what the issues are, what is the problem. So we had our committee visiting power stations, listening, finding out from the power station people, the general manager, what's going on. We called all of those power station general managers to come to Megawatt Park, and we said, this is a safe environment for you. What the hell is going on? Hmm? Please, let's cut all of the nonsense. Can you just, yes, here are your leaders are here with us, but nobody's going to be doing anything. You create that environment. You ask questions for people because other people are not just going to be contributing on their own. You need to say, hey, so and so, go around the room, each and every, there's no free lunch. You are going to say something, and it was amazing how each and every person with like stuff that they were telling us. And then you realize that what you've been hearing and what you are hearing now, a big disconnect, you know. Management is saying this, the people on the ground are saying something completely. There is like this big disconnect. And and I always know who to listen to when it comes to those situations. And the board of ESCOM listened to the people on the ground closer to the problem. So these are the people that get it, they understand it. And that's why it becomes so easy, because when you are coming up with a plan, and a plan that is informed by the thinking coming from the ground, you're not going to have to sell that plan to them, because in essence, this plan came from them, you know, and it's something that they always felt this is what needs to be done. It's just that people are not listening to us. So you always have to create that space for people to shape your thinking. It in that you have put your own brain in a fridge there. No, you're always also using your own experience to check, well, does it make sense, this thing that you are hearing? Not everything that you're hearing is always going to be right. You need to apply your own mind as well into something. And that's what we did. So you listen to your clients, you listen to your investors, you listen to everybody. Then you come up with a strategy that's informed by the insights that you have picked up, you know, from all of these engagements with people. Yeah, yeah.
How do you ignore the noise? How do you ignore the trumpets that are blaring from the more egotistical leaders that are sitting there, those who've got served self-interest? Do you find they're quite obvious, and therefore it's easy to bypass them and look for the people who've got genuine knowledge and input into the process, or is that something which is actually incredibly difficult?
Yeah, I mean, people that, yeah, there are so many people that are opinionated, and they want you to, when you're landing there, they want you to implement their ideas. That's why you have to listen to everybody, test whether these people's ideas are they consistent with what you are picking up overall. You
Yeah.
have to triangulate your information. Meaning, I'm hearing this from the clients. What are our partners saying? What are the investors saying? If then there is that, things are all pointing to one thing, then that's where you need to be focusing on. And then you'll have this one person trying to pull you in a particular direction. You start to realize actually they are trying to drive their self-interest. So that's why you have to really, really spend time with all of the key stakeholders and hear them out. And to avoid people, uh, you know, trying to push an agenda which is more about them
Have you seen any
than
particular
about
trends?
the company. Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen any trends in that space, sort of building on Cassandra's question? Is there kind of we're getting a lot more egotistical, narcissistic leaders, that are out there who are sort of self-promoting and or is just a consistent noise level the whole 30, 40 years of your career? Nothing much has changed. Maybe it's just a public on social feeds.
I think one should always accept that you will find these kind of people that they like to hear their own voices. Their views is the one that always needs to see the light of the day. You should assume that that's what you will find, so that when you meet them, you can almost like discount them and go and seek the quiet ones. For me, it is easy to do this because I'm an introvert, right? So I know that the quiet ones, the ones that are not saying, there's a lot in there. So I invite them into the discussions, and so, and you'll be surprised. They open their mouth, they say a few sentences, and they leave you with great, great insight. So knowing myself, it has helped me to know I go and seek these people, their views, because I know that there's so much that they have of value. I also do these things I used to when I was operational, this thing called round tables, a round table where you invite 10, 15 employees a month, once a month, coming differ from different levels of the organization, and you ask them just two questions. One, what is it that you are doing right? Hmm? What is it that you should continue doing as the leadership? Two, what is it that we need to change in order to make this company, our company, better? You know? And all of the people, the 15 people that are there, again, as I say, there's no such a thing as free lunch. It's a lunch meeting, but they have to open their mouth. They must say something.
Mm.
And you go around and you are not commenting, you take notes, you're listening to them. That's one. That's the first part. The next thing is you need to act on the things that they have told you. You know, that's where you gain so much credibility. Next meeting of the company, you're saying this is what was shared with me, and people said we need to do this and do this. By the way, this is now what we have done. We're doing this. We're going to do that. People start to understand that those sessions are not a waste of time. They are actually shaping the direction of the company, and they want to come to those sessions to contribute, you know. And it keeps you as the leader of the business grounded because they're telling you all of the, not all. That's why I've designed it in such a way that it does not always be like a negative session. You need to find something positive to say and also find something where you feel that we need to improve. It
Mm.
gets you get to understand what's going on the ground, and that is something that's so powerful because many of us as leaders, we are sitting up there, we have no clue what's going on the ground, you know.
Again, his question, have you ever experienced a period in your career where you felt overlooked, disrespected, or stagnant? And if you have, how did you get through that? Any advice for people who feel like that at the moment?
Yes, disrespected. mm,
Overlooked, disrespected, or stagnant?
Overlooked, yes, yes, overlooked. uh, I think it happened, I don't think I know. It happened much earlier in my career.
Mm.
And it happened, I'm, I was socialized in a particular way as I was growing up in the Eastern Cape. You know, I'm one of those children where they say that children should be seen but not heard.
Yeah.
You know, when you are saying nothing, you are a great child. You know, then I come and I'm here in Afrox, you know, and we can see, no man, why is my progression slow compared to all of these people? You know, I know John. John was not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but hey, he has moved so fast. What is it? Is it because of my color? What is it? Why am I being overlooked? Then you realize, no, I realize, I'm not generalizing. In my case, I'm sitting here in meetings, I'm quiet. Nobody has a clue what is it that I'm thinking. I'm not contributing in meetings. Because I've been programmed like that. I grew up, in an environment where, you know, sit there. But the problem is people cannot read the minds of others. They are not mind readers, people. So if you're not saying something, they don't know what is it. So I learned to start to contribute in meetings. I learned to start to ask questions. Each and every meeting, I force myself, I'm going to say something, either comment, ask a question, or contribute. Yeah, you say something, and that action alone, that one thing, acting, working on myself, as difficult as it was, it changed, the trajectory of my career. Mm.
I'd like to ask, where do you find the courage? Um, because so many of the roles that you've taken have, of necessity, been doing something different to whatever the previous leader or person in your position did. And when you're going in and you're trying to do something different, there must be a lot of pushback, both from the people working for you, your peers, and the people that you're working for. So you can spend a lot of time talking to people and developing strategy, but at the end of the day, you end up flying solo in a leadership position. Where do you find and how do you manage the stress that comes with that type of role?
Mhm. Yeah, look, they say that life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage, you know, as life shrinks or expands in proportion. Once we know that this, we know that we've got no choice. If you want your life to expand, you really have to be courageous and start to, so that's the first realization for me, that. But the next thing is there is my own values, for example, knowing what is right and wrong, you know, just knowing what is right and wrong. Uh, you know where you need to be. I know where I need to be on issues, and people can say all sorts of things and give you all sorts of names. Hey, this one is a coconut, this one is this, and this one is deputy white. You know you are none of those things, right? But you know that you need to deliver a certain message that's going to help the people to be able to be better people themselves. You are telling people something that they may not want to hear, but they need to hear, you know. So that what is driving that for me is my purpose in life. I kind of figured what my purpose is, and it may not be 100% right, my purpose, but I've kind of figured what it is. Mine is awakening the giant in others, awakening the giant in others. So that's what I think I'm here for, to help people to understand that within themselves, there's got so much greatness. There's so much. It's not reserved for Pipi Mare. It's not reserved for Colin, this greatness. It's not reserved for Thabo Mbeki. No, it is in there. All of us have this thing, and 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 because I'm living that, uh, I don't really care about anything else about the labeling. Because you care deeply about fixing the ESCOM, because it is so critical for the growth of our country. You know, you can be labeled whatever, but as long as you know that you're doing the right thing, you just continue to do that. So that's just, yeah. It's not like you're not scared. I'm scared, but but it still has to be done. Otherwise, we're not going to have a country. Mm, mm, mm.
We've got 2 minutes to go. What's perhaps now, I guess it'll be the last question. What's your view on the leadership as it stands, today and looking forward? Are you kind of net positive in where things are going, particularly in South Africa? Because there is so much change ahead. Anyone that follows AI will have a view, no doubt, about the potential impact of that, both positive and negative. Positive in terms of the amazing things we can do in productivity, and negative with the disruption, particularly around work that's coming with it, and obviously huge energy requirements, which mean that the work with ESCOM is going to have to be even more important. What's your kind of take on the leadership level we have now moving into this quite disruptive period over the next 10, 20 years? Positive, neutral, negative?
Look, as you probably have heard me saying that when I look at diverse teams always, almost always, outperform teams that are homogeneous, diverse teams. Mm. And so there's something about diversity. If you look at America, the diversity of the US versus the countries like a Japan that is homogeneous, or a Germany, the innovation that is coming from the US, is linked to the fact that you've got these people coming from different angles, looking at something and coming up with stuff. Where am I going with this thing? I think where we are, where there is no one dominant organization that is leading our country, where we are forced to work together, that is actually a good thing, because it's forcing people, there are some of us that are driven by the heart, some of us that are driven by the head, some of us are more doers, the hand, a combination of all of this, looking at how to fix our problems of economic growth can only be a good thing for our country. So where we are, it may look rough. Now we end up with budget 3.0. It's a good thing. It's great that we have that because it means that people are fighting and coming up with ideas that need to. We cannot continue to be doing what we have been doing over the last 30 years, and it has not worked.
What a nice way to end. Thank you very much, Mteto. I mean, a lot to be taken away there, but purpose, curiosity, courage, ethics, diversity, the themes that continually come out and are talked about, written about in books, lectured in universities and management schools. But it's so nice to introduce someone that lives by it. So I really want to thank you on behalf of everyone for joining us on the call. And of course, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the call. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Next up, I forget the dates. We're going to be looking a little bit more in the future in terms of technology, leadership in the future with Herman Singh. I'm sure if you're on LinkedIn, you're probably following Herman already. He is quite a big following, actually. I don't know if it's as big as you're following though, in Teto. But anyway, with that, a last thanks to Henley Business School for sponsoring these, and I look forward to chatting to you all soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye.